Hello and welcome to a special daily edition of Side Notes in honor of Holy Week. Join us as we walk together as a church through the last week of the life of Jesus before his death, burial, and resurrection. My name is Arch. I'm the community life pastor, and I am here with Josh Rhodes, our senior pastor. Josh, how are you today?
I'm doing great, man.
Good.
Yeah, doing just fine.
Good.
Yourself?
I'm doing better now that I'm sitting here talking with you.
There you go.
Enjoying some side notes on this side of the mic and on this side of the camera, which we have cameras right now because we
got to look our best,
Weeks.
Man.
This is day three of the Holy Week
coming
edition
to you on
of Side
Wednesday,
Notes.
Holy Week.
That's right, Absolutely. Which is amazing. And we're so pumped. The past couple of days, we've talked about a first couple things happening in the life of Jesus that week, with the cleansing of the temple, with the Last Supper, and we are going to be moving right along, walking with Jesus through this last week. And I'm really excited to hop in and kind of dig into what we have. And so I think today we're just going to hop in. Let's just jump right in.
Sounds good, man.
Feet first.
Yeah, sounds
first.
Good.
Awesome, man. Well, that's where we've been. And today, where are we going to be, Josh?
Yes, we're going to be looking at Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. So you're going to read that for us in just a moment. But this would have occurred directly after that Last Supper, which we just, yesterday walked through. So they left that place, and then they went to what is described in the Gospel of John as a familiar place where they regularly prayed. So they would have spent time there with Jesus before. But this would have been the Thursday night before the cross.
Yes.
So yeah, it's an intense scene. Man, you just feel the intensity, really on the eve before the cross.
Yeah.
So that's where we're going to be zooming in on this episode.
Yes, sir. Awesome. Well, I'll go ahead and read. We're going to read Mark 14, 32 through 52, and then we'll reflect on it. We'll respond to it. We'll kind of take a peek at it. So, real quick though, I forgot my glasses this morning, and I don't wear contacts, so I'm struggling to see.
Okay.
It's been harder, but I got this. Believe in myself.
That's it, man.
Gonna make it happen. I can read.
If you want me to.
No, I got you.
If you want me to read.
I got you. I just got to hold my Bible a little closer.
Just right here, man.
That's right. Right here. All right. Chapter 14, verse 32. It says, "Then they came to a place named Gethsemane, and he told his disciples, 'Sit here while I pray.' He took Peter, James, and John with him and began to be deeply distressed and troubled. He said to them, 'I am deeply grieved to the point of death. Remain here and stay awake.' He went a little farther. He fell to the ground and prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. And he said, 'Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what you will.' Then he came and found them sleeping. He said to Peter, 'Simon, why are you sleeping? Couldn't you stay awake 1 hour? Stay awake and pray so that you won't enter into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak.' Once again, he went away and prayed, saying the same thing. And again, he came and found them sleeping because they could not keep their eyes open. They did not know what to say to him. Then he came a third time and said to them, 'Are you still sleeping and resting? Enough. The time has come. See, the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let's go. See, my betrayer is near.' While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, suddenly arrived. With him was a mob, with swords and clubs from the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders. His betrayer had given them a signal. 'The one I kiss,' he said, 'he's the one. Arrest him and take him away under guard.' So when he came, immediately he went up to Jesus and said, 'Rabbi,' and kissed him. They took hold of him and arrested him. One of those who stood by drew his sword, struck the high priest's servant, and cut off his ear. Jesus said to them, 'Have you come out with swords and clubs as if I were a criminal to capture me? Every day I was among you teaching in the temple, and you didn't arrest me. But the scriptures must be fulfilled. Then they all deserted him and ran away. Now a certain young man, wearing nothing but a linen cloth, was following him. They caught hold of him, but he left the linen cloth behind and ran away naked. The word of the Lord.
It's in there.
It's in there.
Yeah.
There's some verses that it's like, what do you do with that? Verse 51, 52 are some of those verses at the end of that passage there, huh, Josh?
It is, yeah. We'll get to that unless you want to start there.
I think we start there and then we'll come back around because there's an interesting theory around those verses. Mm-hmm. Do you want to kind of dive into that a hair? What some people think?
Yeah. So we mentioned in the previous episodes this week that that Mark was likely an associate of Peter.
Yep.
So this is Peter's account and Mark the author, but some scholars think that this was actually a reference to himself.
Yes.
Which is an interesting way to put yourself in the story. That he ran away after getting this linen pulled off of him.
Yeah.
So if I'm putting myself into the gospel, I don't know that that's how I'm inserting myself in the story, but I'm sure there was a logic and reason.
Yeah. The only reason that would make sense to me if I'm Mark is I'm including it if it's true. You know, like if it actually happened, like, you know, and it's one of the details like that, that like historians use to look back at historical documents and a text and say, is this accurate or is this historically reliable? One of those factors is, do they include embarrassing details? Because someone is not going to include embarrassing details in a made up story. Like if I'm just making this up and I'm Mark and it is Mark, I'm not going to make up a story about like running in my PJs and then getting them stripped off and running away naked. But like, if it's true, you know, so another idea would be like how, and we might talk about this, is how like the first people to find Jesus at the tomb were women, or to find him not at the tomb were women.
Right.
And if you're making up this story because you want to create this narrative that Jesus actually rose from the grave, this is made up, you're not going to make women be the ones to do that, because women's word wasn't even admissible in court, in like a court of law. It wasn't seen as trustworthy in that sense in their culture. And so if you're making it up, no, it's going to be Peter, James, and John. But instead it's the women. And so these are one of these kind of embarrassing details, quote unquote, that people will point to say, this only really fits if it's true. And so, you know, I'm not sure if it was actually Mark. Scholars are not actually sure. It's just kind of one of the theories. But if it is him, that would be, I think, why he included it, because it's true.
Yeah.
And he wants people to know that this is true. And the people would have known, right? Like that probably would have been a story that got around the town a little bit, you know?
Old Mark.
Like, I saw Mark running home naked back from Mount Olives, you know?
Yeah.
So maybe it was Mark, maybe it wasn't, but somebody did it. Happened to somebody.
It's an interesting detail for sure.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well, man, you got through the passage without your glasses.
Yes.
Which is amazing.
Yes. I had to hold it close.
But, man, there's a lot here. So when you kind of read through, just what is maybe the first thing that kind of catches your eye?
Well, the first thing is Gethsemane, and it's like, that's a hard word. And we were even talking before, it's like, how do we pronounce that? Is it Gethsemane? Is it Gethsemane? I don't really know.
We'll go with Geth.
Okay, we'll go
Sounds
with Geth.
good.
I like the H there. So Gethsemane, that's one of the first things, is like, the names and sometimes in the Bible will trip you up. But as I think about it, it's like, man, like in 33, right? So he has like, probably his 11, and he has 8 of them sit down and pray. And then he goes further with James, John, and Peter. And then he tells them to sit and pray. And then it says, as he's with them, he was deeply distressed and troubled. And he says, to the point of death. When I think of Jesus, I don't think of someone necessarily who had something so burdensome that literally was distressed to the point of death. And it's like, I think of, again, like I think we talked about, just like, holding the lamb and the gentle, senior picture Jesus, or Jesus healing, talking with the kids, or, raising, like doing, or, and like those things are all true, right? Like all the it's like, man, the miraculous and the conquer, the celebratory and the victorious, right. But also someone who was distressed to the point of death. Our Lord and Savior, our Creator, subjected himself to that. And it's like, he didn't need to do that. He willingly did that. He allowed this to happen to himself, and we know now why, like because of what's going to happen in just the next day. And so it's like, man, that's the first thing that strikes me is the humanity of Jesus in this moment. And, again, back to that Philippians 2 passage with Paul, of just how, even though Jesus was God, he did not use it to his advantage. And he kind of, took on the form of a servant as a human, became obedient to the Father. And we see that supremely in this passage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as you were sharing that, that's beautiful. The phrase, the weight of the world. We use that phrase, when we're stressed and have a lot going on. Like, it just feels like I've got the weight of the world on my back.
Yeah.
But like, this literally was the weight of the world on him.
Yeah.
Knowing in his divinity, having the knowledge of what was about to occur, what he was about to endure.
Yeah.
But still in his humanity, pouring out his heart to the Father.
Yeah.
Father, all things are possible for you. Take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what you will. And we talked before we pushed record, was this Jesus in his humanity going to the Father? Like, is there any other way?
Yeah.
Is there any other way to solve this problem? Yeah. In his divinity, he would have known, no, this is the only answer. The path. So probably not a question of like, can we, the triune God, change our mind here?
Yeah, or do something different. Can we audible?
So probably not that.
Yeah.
But probably just a true pouring out his heart the night before he would go to the cross. I mean, it's just, what a picture of his humanity, and then the people that he's been pouring into for 3 years.
Yeah. Peter,
James, and John, the ones that he chose to go on the Mount of Transfiguration to see his full glory revealed, they fall asleep on him.
Bro.
It's like the people who are supposed to have your back.
Who, by the way, what did Peter just tell Jesus right before this? After Last Supper, before this?
Yeah.
Hey, not only will I'd die for you, bro.
Yeah.
I would die for you. And I can't even stay awake for you. That's why I think Jesus calls him out specifically, right? Like in verse 37, he comes to them, they're all sleeping, but he said to Peter, Simon, why are you sleeping? Didn't you just say you would die for me? You can't even stay awake for me to put your life on the line,
right?
To die for me. But James and John had also in different places said they would die for Jesus. So these are all three men saying, yeah, I'll die for you. I'll go to the end of my life for you. And Jesus is like, bro, you can't even stay awake for me, dog, let alone die for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After he had just served them the Last Supper, after he had served them,
washed their feet.
And this is in the same night.
Yeah.
Now they are falling asleep on who they said, we're never going to turn our back. We're never going to,
Yeah.
So, man.
That's a hard experience for Jesus, I think, because at the same time, he is Savior, he is King, he is God, but he has befriended these men, and he is a man who has walked alongside hand in hand, and taught these men and walked with them, laughed with them, ate with them, cried with them, like these are his guys, and that's a hard moment. I think, Judas probably, obviously takes a brunt of the, criticism in this passage, but they're not scot-free either,
Yeah.
It's interesting, man. We were, as we're thinking about Jesus and what happens in this story and what's going on, we were starting to talk a little bit beforehand about the significance of where this is happening and what's going on. Would you mind opening up, kind of digging into some of that?
Yeah. So this would have been the Mount of Olives, and let me see. In this context, doesn't specifically say Kidron Valley, but other Gospels give us this very specific location which would have been on the Mount of Olives, named because it was full of olive trees.
Yeah.
And, I mentioned a few weeks ago that I got to take one trip there and got to visit this traditional site. And you can see the Temple Mount. You can see the current city of Jerusalem from this vantage point. It's absolutely beautiful. But what's really fascinating is that olive trees, if they don't get struck with lightning or any other disease, they can actually live for thousands of years.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know if we can overlay any images and post, but pictures of those olive trees, and they don't grow up, they grow out.
Yeah.
So they get bigger and bigger and bigger in circumference. And our guide told us that the trees in that garden could very well have been alive 2,000 years ago.
That's crazy.
Jesus was there.
So it could have been the same olive trees.
Very possible.
Yeah.
So, but here's what's interesting. So in the text that you read, 34, it says, "Then he said to them, my soul is swallowed up in sorrow to the point of death. Remain here and stay awake." And then over in the Gospel of Luke, who was a doctor, 22:44 says that his sweat became like great drops of blood falling to the ground. So I'm looking at a website called gotquestions.org, and the article is titled, "Why Did Jesus Sweat Blood in the Garden of Gethsemane?"
Yeah.
And I'm going to botch this, but it's an actual medical condition called hematidrosis. Am I saying that right?
Hema?
Hema. I threw an R in there.
Yeah, it's okay.
So hematidrosis, according to this website, says it's a rare but very real medical condition that causes one's sweat to contain blood. The sweat glands are surrounded by tiny blood vessels that can constrict and then dilate to the point of rupture, causing blood to infuse with the sweat glands.
Wow.
The cause is extreme anguish. But here's what's really fascinating.
Okay.
So, I'm not a big olive oil guy.
Yeah.
Are you?
I could do without it.
But the way that an olive, the olive oil, those olives have to be completely crushed
To get the oil out.
Yeah, and they've got old, they're still over their presses, and animals would move the stones. But that olive would have to be crushed to get that olive oil out. So when you put it together, he is at this point of death, the weight of the world. He is like the olive being crushed to where like that olive is crushed and the drops of olive oil come from it. I think that's the connection here.
Yeah.
That he is being crushed with the weight of the world and what's about to occur to the point that he is sweating blood.
Yeah.
So that when you kind of put all of that context together, it's absolutely fascinating.
It is, and especially because like Mark does include, it says he went a little further, fell to the ground, and then prayed that prayer to the Father. And so he's falling to the ground. Luke includes the detail of the blood, and so he's literally being crushed, knowing that he is going to have to drink the cup of wrath that God is going to pour out, because he is moving from a perfect union for eternity as the triune God with the Father, with the Spirit, to he is about to take on the weight of the world's sin and be stripped, be kind of pulled out of that to be his relationship with God is going to be broken, in that moment, as he is going to take on literally the weight of the world's sin, And so I think he is feeling that and being crushed under that weight, in that moment, knowing what is to come and knowing what he is about to be ripped, about to be ripped from, about to be stripped from him, about to be, experience. And so, literally being crushed by the weight of that and being pressed, and then olive oil, like the thing that is being pressed out of Jesus is his blood, which is the blood of the new covenant, which he just told his best friends, hey, drink this in remembrance of me. This is my blood, the blood of the new covenant. And this new covenant is going to change everything. You are going to be healed and washed by my blood. You're going to be cleansed because of my blood. It is my blood that is like the new sacrifice, like the animal's blood would have been, like the doorpost of the Exodus, like now, like that is what is happening. And he's being pressed and crushed and destroyed by the weight of this, as he is going to be actually crushed and destroyed by this the next day. And like, again, the just how remarkable the symbolism of all of that. And I do think, like, maybe you mentioned this, but I know before when we were talking, like, I think his disciples, had they stayed awake, would have, been understanding that, because they would have known, they would have been familiar with olive presses and how, like, they would have seen this happening in action. And it is just incredible. And like, oftentimes when I think of, the suffering of Christ, I start with the cross, or maybe even the, like his arrest. And I sometimes miss this part and this incredibly heavy piece of it that shows the humanity of Jesus. And like, man, that's somebody I can relate with. Like, I've been in moments where I have fallen to the ground, crushed by life and what's going on, and the weight of emotional things and relationships and hard times. And man, I'm crushed. And it's like, Jesus gets that. Yeah. And he gets that. And like, I think what happens in the garden can be a formula for us and what we ought to do when we're in a moment like that. Bring it to God. Be real with him. Be raw. And man, I don't want this to happen. God, I want my loved one to get better. God, but like, at the end of it, your will be done. Yeah. Not my will. There's this incredible trust and submission of being real with God, casting your cares on him, but at the same time, above all else, the thing that we want, because we know it is best, even if we don't want it, is God's will to be done. Right. And so this submission to that. And so I think that's a model for us, so how good. We ought to pray in those moments of crushing weight, whatever that crushing weight is for you.
Now, in that we kind of keep coming back to that verse, that key verse 36, Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what you will. Could you touch on take this cup away from me? Because he could have said, Abba, Father, please take away the cross. Abba, Father, please don't make me go to the cross, because he knew that was what was coming. But maybe help us understand, like, why that language, take this cup away from me.
Yeah, as I was just kind of looking through in the Bible Knowledge Commentary, which we really like, he talks about two metaphors, right? The hour and the cup. And so it says the metaphor of the hour denoted God's appointed time when Jesus would suffer and die, right? And so he wants the hour to pass. But it says the corresponding metaphor, the cup, referred to the same event. The cup means either human suffering and death, or more likely, God's wrath against sin, which when poured out includes not only physical but also spiritual suffering and death. In bearing God's judgment, the sinless Jesus endured the agony of being made sin. And so I think what Jesus is referring to is the cup of God's wrath, which there is a reality to. I think he is willingly drinking that cup. Like, he's willingly, it's not like he is choosing this, it's like, I remember when, I was doing youth ministry and the Hunger Games came out, right? And, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the Hunger Games from 15 years ago or whenever that was, like Katniss, there's, this whole situation where her sister is essentially randomly selected to take part in the Hunger Games, which was sure death, right? And it's their 12-year-old sister, and Katniss, the main character, volunteers in her place, and so I remember I use that as an analogy all the time, is like, like what Jesus was not a victim, he was a volunteer. He chose to step into our place. And so, I think in that he's choosing to drink this cup. But it is a cup of wrath that is about to be poured out. And it was either going to be something that God poured out on us, or Jesus willingly drank himself and took so we didn't have to.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, just that visual of his wrath being poured out upon us, just literally dumping it out, which is what we deserve because of our sin. Yeah. That's all of us, all have sinned, all have fallen short, all are deserving of that. But he chose to take all of it upon himself. And that's theologically what we believe, is that, the reason why he was under the weight of the world is because he literally took upon himself the sin of the world. For God so loved the world.
Yeah.
He sent his one and only son, right? So he took it upon himself. And I guess what's going through my mind just from a very human perspective, and you were already touching on this, is like when life crushes us, we get that news, we get that diagnosis, this circumstance happens, and man, like it's like we've been there where I can't get up off the couch right now.
Yeah.
Or I just want to lay flat on the floor until this passes. Or it's the funeral where it's like I can't stand here by my loved one anymore. I've got to go take a seat. I think we can all relate to that, where this is so hard, but how much more for him?
Yeah.
Knowing from this point in this garden, I am going to be betrayed, which we already read.
Yeah.
I'm going to be falsely stood up in these sham trials. And then after that, all of this is about to unfold.
I'm going to be flogged.
The beatings, all of it.
The mockery.
I just can't imagine. It's like, I know how I feel. This is probably going to be a poor example, but like the night before you go to the dentist, or the night you go in for an outpatient procedure, or the night before a difficult conversation.
Yeah.
The weight you feel, the anxieties.
You feel sick to your stomach.
Is there any way I can get out of this?
Yeah.
How much more? How much more would he have felt? It's like grief upon grief.
Yeah.
It's not just the spiritual, but then these people who are like, we got your back, fall asleep on you.
Yeah. The CSB Study Bible says, deeply distressed, that he's feeling, has the nuance of greatly alarmed and distressed. And it says troubled expresses, the extreme anxiety. It's like the connotation of these words, and the picture that is being portrayed for us, man, is just this utter overwhelmingness. It's not a word, I don't think, but
it is now.
There we go. That's how Shakespeare did it. He just made up words, and now we don't really use his words anymore, but
Shakespeare
did for a while. This overwhelming sense of, man, the weight of what is about to happen, what is to come, what he's experiencing, and man, I just appreciate how raw, how real Jesus is in that moment, and how vulnerable he is and like he doesn't sit there and stay crushed, like he takes it to the Father. And I think that's sometimes the gap for me is, man, I will just be crushed and I will feel like I can't do anything about it. And the reality is I probably can't, but I need to take that to the Father. And it's almost like, you got something you need to tell people or whatever. And like you're holding it in, maybe it's a secret, or maybe, it's news that maybe it's bittersweet or whatever. And as you share that, you feel lighter, in a sense. Like I think there's a reality to that of Jesus, man, laying this on the Father, and just laying it out there 3 times,
right.
And over and over and over again, and the experience of his friends, betraying him in this kind of smaller way than Judas, but still doing it. And man, that just letting that out, and just that reminder again 3 different times of, man, not my will, but your will. Okay, God, Father, This is what I'm dealing with. This is how I'm feeling. I'm dying here, man. There's got to be something else, but not my will, but your will. Gosh, Lord, I am, Father, but not my will, but your will. It's like, that's, again, man, that's what should be our default in those moments, to go to that, to go to the Father, to lay that out there and just say, not my will, but your will. I trust you. Trust you, whatever it is. And we typically, for us, it's uncertainty. For Jesus, it was certain turmoil. Right. It was certain destruction. For us, it's usually, I don't know what's going to happen. It could be good. For Jesus, it was certain bad, for him personally, and good for all of us. Like, just kind of mind-blowing. And I think it helps paint the picture of his love for us. Like that's the thing. That's what we come back to. That's why it's important that he's not a victim. He's a volunteer, because it was out of his love for us, for God so loved the world, like you said, man, that this is why God did this, because he loved us. Christ proves his love for us. God proves his love for us. And that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us, man.
Well, and that's all. Yeah. Thanks for sharing all that. That's amazing. I think sometimes I forget because we're not first century. So we have to bring ourselves back into that context. That this crucifixion, Jesus with the, the one on the left and the right, he would have seen these crucifixions being in and around Jerusalem. This was a common practice. Yeah. This was how the Roman authorities kept people in check. Yep. You're going to try to rise up against us. This is going to be your fate. Yep. So this unfortunately, was a common occurrence. Yep. Walking down the road, they would have seen criminals and they displayed them right outside of cities. So as you came in, you saw, don't mess with us, right? It was right there's billboards. Yeah. So he would have known exactly what they're going to do. And we know from the rest of the gospel accounts that his treatment and the scourging and the beatings were far worse and more extreme. But, so kind of keeping with our model of read, reflect, and respond, you just touched on, I think, one great response point of going to God, or a little bit earlier, that it may not change the circumstance. It may not change what, you're about to go through, but just casting that care upon the Father, I think is a great one. Yeah. I think that's step one when you're in any moment where you're feeling heavy, where your belly's sick with anxiety, where you don't know what to do, where you can't get up, right? Like, man, bring it to the Father. When you don't know what else to say, use Jesus's words. Like, I've done that before, of just like, Lord, take this cup from me, but man, not my will, but your will. And I'm not trying to equate what I'm going through to what Jesus went through, but just like, I don't have the words to say, and so it's like, man, I just, take, Lord, I don't know what to do. I'm stressed. I'm whatever, but man, not my will, but your will, like, I think I've had moments of doing that, Now, why do you think for you, because I think that could be kind of the primary, right here, this takeaway that when we're in these kinds of moments in life, Lord, take this away. Lord, let this pass. Lord, change this, but I submit. Like, why do you think that makes you personally just feel lighter, better, kind of released from some of it, even if in your mind, like, I don't think anything's probably going to change by tomorrow. Yeah. But man, that's so crazy. Like, Jesus was praying knowing nothing's going to change with his prayers. Like, we pray in hopes that this thing changes. And that's kind of it a lot of times. Jesus is praying knowing that it's not changing, right? It's like, so then why is he praying? Well, for relationship, and it's like, I think it's kind of what, as of listening to this 2 weeks ago, Josh taught on Lazarus and Jesus abiding in the Father and how we ought to abide in the Father and in Christ. And so I think there's a level of in doing that is working toward dwelling with God. And, it's kind of what Paul says, right? That Philippians 4, do not continue in anxiety, but, by prayer, supplication, thanksgiving, make these requests known to God. Right. And so that's what you're doing in saying, God, here's what I'm feeling. Here's the raw, real, all of that, but then at the end of the day, that reminder for me is the key part. Because I'm not just treating God like a vending machine, because I'm treating him like a real person, this relationship with the Father, but B, it reminds me of who's in control. Yeah. It reminds me of who's in charge. It helps me see the forest. You know what I mean? Like, it helps me see things more clearly, to zoom out from this problem, this situation, this circumstance, and say, okay, this makes no sense to me. I can't deal with this, but God is sovereign and in control. Yeah.
God is sovereign and in control. And if he's sovereign and in control, I'm going to trust in his will because of what we've learned, what we talked about, like in Romans 8, right? And because God is taking all the things in our life and using them to our good, for our good. And, you know, for those who love him and who are believers, who are part of his family, he's taking all of these things, using them for our good. And our good is becoming more like him, is knowing him and loving him more, loving people more. And so God is going to use these things. And so it's that step into either back into or forward in relationship. And it's that, man, that reiteration and reminder of who is in control and that I should trust him. And so it kind of helps me release, you know, in some sense. I stop holding on to it so tightly and I go, God, it's your will. And I'm gonna trust you with it, even though cause I got no clue, man. So.
And I wonder in that moment, if he was even reminding himself, maybe in his humanity, of what he knew to be true. Because he already said previously, you're going to tear down this temple, but 3 days later it's going to get built again.
Yep.
He knew wholeheartedly, and I don't suspect at all that he doubted. Fully man, fully God.
Yep.
I'm about to go through this, but on the other side is going to be resurrection.
Yeah.
Which I think is also just maybe a takeaway, maybe a response. By faith, we believe everything you just said.
Yeah.
He's going to work it all together for good.
Yep.
That's his promise.
Yep.
But we still go through hard things.
Yeah. Yeah.
We still feel crushed.
Yeah.
We still feel like the weight of the world is on our shoulders. And I think sometimes as Christians, we can skip to, but resurrection's coming.
Yeah.
God's going to work it out together for good.
Yeah.
God's not going to leave you or forsake you. It's like, yes, all of that's true.
Yeah.
But right now, I'm sweating blood.
Yep.
My friends fell asleep.
Yep.
And I would love another way if there was another way.
Absolutely.
And that's okay to be in that place. It's okay to be there. And maybe that's where some of us are right now, you know, feeling like, man, the weight of the world is crushing. And I love that pastoral encouragement. Don't hold back. Bring it to him. Be honest. Cast your cares. And I've had that same experience. It's like, it may not change anything, but just to remind myself that Josh is not in control. God is. And he's got me.
Amen.
So it's good stuff, man. We probably could talk another hour from this text, but
that's right. We got to wrap it up at some point. And what an incredible conversation. Keep joining us the rest of Holy Week.
Yeah.
And we'll see you Friday night at our Good Friday service. We'll see you Sunday morning for Easter Sunday, the incredible celebration.
Yeah,
very awesome. Good week. But that does it for today's special week, Holy Week edition of Side Notes. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you continue to grow with God and others this week. We'll catch you next time.